Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I want to say good evening to the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, and the city manager. Tonight, I would like to give you a quick overview of the fiscal year 26 budget. Like the city manager said, you received your budget on April 28th, and then you received recently the long presentation of the budget. With me tonight is Thomas Raines. He's our Deputy Director of OMB, as well as Jonathan Baker, the budget analyst for the department. Copies of the proposed budget is available in the clerk's office up here on the second floor of City Hall. It's on the city's website. Tonight, we're doing our first session of review. We're planning on having a public hearing as well as adoption on Monday, May 19th. If anyone has any questions or a citizen wants to get in contact with their questions, they can reach me at 989-759-1784 or ybland@saginaw-mi.com. The 26 budget continues to reflect our commitment to quality and services for our residents, as well as preserves our organization's long-term financial stability. The total citywide budget is projected to be at $203.77 million. This represents a $30.14 million or 13% decrease from the previous fiscal year. The general fund budget for fiscal year 26 is projected to be $45.14 million. And this represents an increase of $587,822, or roughly 2% from the previous fiscal year. Non-general fund budgets account for approximately 78% of the total citywide budget. And when I say non-general fund, I'm referring to the four other fund types that I'll be reviewing tonight. So let's talk a little bit about the largest changes that occur in four funds that is impacting your budget. In 2025, budget reflected the state of Michigan Saginaw Medical Facility Fund. The city received from the state of Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Development a grant of $30.3 million. This new fund was created in fiscal year 25, and activities have occurred through that fund for the development of the medical facility. For fiscal year 26, we are budgeting $21.27 million as we will begin to work on the project. Another fund that's impacted this year is your American Rescue Plan Act fund, which will decrease about $28.92 million. As City Council has already allocated all the ARPA funds, people have been spending it. And so as people are spending it, your balance is going down. We will continue to review the ARPA funds, and we will do budget adjustments throughout the year as people are spending more that wasn't captured in the, when we were developing the budget. The Water Operation and Maintenance Fund will decrease $10.38 million, and this reduction is due to a decrease in the planned construction projects for water improvements. The Department of Water and Wastewater Services continues to budget for the elevated storage tank project and the lead and copper galvanizing line replacement project. A portion of these expenditures will be offset by federal and state grants. The last fund that will be impactful, all funds are impactful from a budget perspective, but will have a large change, is your Sewer Operation and Maintenance Funds, which will decrease about 11%, or $4.11 million. This decrease is directly related to a reduction in the number of construction projects planned for 2026. Fiscal year 26 also reflects changes to the salaries for all employees, as council already approved the collective bargaining agreement in late fiscal year 23. This agreement allows for a 2% across the board increase. The cost of healthcare benefits also increases, and the projected increase for active healthcare, which is very surprising, was about 30%. And that was partly due to prescriptions. And then 12% of it was retiree health care. So you see a 12% increase in retiree health care. The city will also experience an increase in several of its internal service funds, such as technical services IS, because the cost of software, the motor pool operation and maintenance fund, due to the cost of vehicles, motor vehicle supplies and repair costs. and the self-insurance fund due to increase in insurance rates nationwide. And for your ease of trying to understand all this information, if you are reading the budget document, I would highly suggest looking at the budget overview section, which starts on page 31 through 59, because there we give a lot of explanation as to the variance, why things are changing. Also want to give you a pictorial representation of what your historical city budgets have looked like. So in fiscal year 22, you can see that the general fund budget was $37.79 million. Citywide budget was $132.4 million. As of 2026, you'll see that the general fund budget is $45.14 million and citywide is $203.77 million. Your largest budget was in 25, where you can see that overall citywide it was $233.92 million. So wanted to talk about some challenges that the city's facing. First thing I want to talk about is your employee healthcare benefit costs. So the city continues to face significant challenges related to rising costs of maintaining a comprehensive service delivery system. One of the primary financial pressures continue from the escalating costs of providing healthcare services to employees, which has had a substantial impact on the city's overall budget. For fiscal year 26, the cost of providing employee healthcare benefits increased by nearly 30%. With the city's revenues remaining relatively flat, this significant rise in expenditure has placed considerable strain on Saginaw's financial position, but we're in a healthy position. It's just surprising that a 30% increase, I've been here for 18 years, that's the largest increase I've seen in the last 18 years, but it was impactful. Other employee post-employment benefits, also known as your OPEB, and your pension liabilities. Funding for the OPEB and pension liabilities remain a significant concern for the city of Saginaw, and for fiscal year 26, budget continues to address these unfunded liabilities by allocating funds towards both retiree healthcare and pension costs. To support the long-term and affordability of pension expense, the city has re-amortized its pension assets. Fiscal year 26 marks the 4th year of realizing these re-amortized pension contributions. Fiscal year 26 reflects a 12% increase in retiree health care driven by current market conditions, and then the pension obligation will remain the same as in fiscal year 25 at $19 million. And something that I talked about at our strategic planning session was our population loss as something that does impact us. Saginaw has grappled with budget challenges for many years, and one of the most pressing issues is declining population. Many of the major revenue funds, such as state shared revenues, property income tax, federal entitlement funds, are impacted by the city's population. Revenues like state share revenue and state allocated dollars for roads are directly impacted by the number of city residents that we have. As the population continues to shrink, these revenue streams decrease accordingly, making it increasingly difficult to maintain essential services, invest in infrastructure, and to support long-term growth. This ongoing population loss fuels a cycle of disinvestment and financial strain, further complicating efforts to stabilize the city finances and attract new residents. But there is a positive side. I mean, that kind of like, it's a little gloomy, right? Yeah. Oh, there's a positive side to this. Right? The way that the city of Saginaw has been able to cope with these challenges has been through the identification and securing other revenue sources, which has been grants. You've got a lot of grants. Let's talk about your resource allocation. So the breakdown of the total $203.77 million is represented in this pie chart. The general fund represents roughly 22% of the total citywide budget. Special revenue funds represents roughly 31% of the total budget. The largest part of the budget is represented in your enterprise funds, which consists of your boat launch fund, sewer and water operation and maintenance funds at 42% of the total budget. Internal service funds represents roughly 5% of your total budget, and your fiduciary funds is 0.02% of your total budget. There are specific expenditures that are impacting all of your funds. So as I go through the presentation looking at the fund type, this is something that's overarching. These expenditures include your across-the-board salary increase of 2%, You see increases in your general liability insurance costs due to current market conditions, increase in information management charges due to the cost of computer software, increase in the motor pool charge for services and repair, at 12% increase in retiree health care, and then your 30% increase in your active health care. The general fund, this is your largest discretionary fund. And again, this represents roughly 22% of your total citywide budget. And this budget for fiscal year 26 is projected to be $45.14 million. This represents an increase of $587,822, or roughly 2% from the previous year. Now, looking specifically at each of your general fund departments, because it's broken out into various appropriation centers. In the Office of General Government, there will be an $87,473 increase, and outside of the items that I listed off earlier, some of the notable changes will be realized in the Office of Human Resources as they increase their labor professional services. In the Office of Management and Budget, the 26 budget reflects the continued contract with Guidehouse as City Council approved the use of ARPA interest to offset the expenditure. The Department of Fiscal Services will realize $107,776 increase. This increase is tied to salary benefit increases as well as contracted services. And then now I want to talk a little bit more in depth about community public safety, police, and fire. Looking at community public safety police, we have 64 sworn and 25.6 civilian, making the total complement as 89.6 personnel. During fiscal year 25, City Council approved the Department of Justice Office on Violence Against Women grant. This added an additional police officer to the personnel complement for the next 3 years. However, this budget does reflect a reduction in 7 school crossing guards in the patrol division. This reduction is due to the fact that these positions have been vacant for several years and are no longer required due to the closing of several schools. Additionally, a tackling operator will be added to the complement while eliminating an office assistant 2 position. So it was a vacant position. We kind of upgraded it to a tackling operator. Community public safety police will increase approximately 11%. And outside of the items I've already discussed, this increase is largely due to the city allocating $1.36 million in state and federal grants. So they received a lot of grants in this past year that we're recognizing. Now, looking at the personnel complement for community public safety fire, community public safety fire's sworn number is 41 sworn and 1 civilian, making the total complement to be 42. During fiscal year 25, City Council approved the addition of the Community Engagement Officer for the National Opioid Settlement Fund. 10% of this position is allocated to the general fund, and the remaining 90% is allocated to the National Opioid Settlement Fund. Community public safety fire will increase $106,927, and this is attributed to your retiree health care increase, as well as general liability premium insurance costs, record management software, information management charges, and training and development. Moving to the next department is neighborhood services and inspections, and this department will realize a $290,920 increase from the previous year. For 2026, this department will realize an increase in salary and benefits for 2 code enforcement officers that will be allocated to the inspection divisions. These positions were once paid for from the Community Development Block Grant Fund. In addition, we're allocating 10% of salary and benefit costs of 2 environmental enforcement officers to the parking operations division for the care of city-owned parking lots. These environmental enforcement officers are shared with the Rubbish Collection Fund Environmental Improvement Division. The next department within the general fund is Department of Public Services, and this one will decrease $1.77 million. The largest reduction in the general fund budget, and this is due to the completion of the Department of Housing and Urban Development 2023 Community Project Fund that we received 2 years ago. Outside of this discussion, they will continue to utilize the McDonald Ford Municipal Buyback Program for purchasing of vehicles, and they will replace features at the Celebration Park splash pad. The department will continue to pay debt service. The last department of the general fund is your other general fund expenditures. This department will decrease 2% from the prior year, and this reduction is realized in the fund's operating transfers out. During fiscal year 25, the general fund, through the cost allocation plan, was required to repay the local street funds for funds that they capture in the previous cost allocation plan. That is done for 26. We've covered it for 25. We no longer have to pay that in 26. So that was the reduction in this department. Special revenue funds. Now, special revenue funds accounts for proceeds from specific revenue sources that are legally restricted to expenditures for specific purposes. These funds account for roughly 31% of the total citywide budget. These decreases are most noticeably seen in and as I already said, the American Rescue Plan Act fund will decrease about $28.92 million, and this reduction is due to completion of council-approved projects. But again, we will be doing budget adjustments as people continue to spend their money, and as they spend their money, we need to allocate for it. So that's going to happen in 26. The Downtown Development Fund will decrease $731,267 to make the 26 budget to be $188,820. This reduction is attributed to the completion of the $1 million grant from the State of Michigan Environmental Great Lakes Energy Remediation Redevelopment Division. You'll see on this chart that CDBG is listed at $5.2 million. Well, there's various funds within that CDBG category. The Community Development Block Grant Fund is one of those funds, and that fund will be $1.94 million for fiscal year 26. This is a reduction of $318,041. This reduction is due to a decrease in the federal entitlement funds. The Capital Project Fund accounts for financial resources that are used for long-term investment projects requiring large sums to acquire, develop, improve, and/or maintain capital assets. For fiscal year 26, the budget will be $3.49 million, and this is a decrease of $411,000. This decrease will be recognized in funds allocated towards debt service payments, because in 2015, we had the limited capital improvement bond that we had issued, and so those payments are going down. So that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a reduction in those debt service payments, as well as we reduce the allocation for the City Hall renovation project. So we just budgeted less for that project. Another fund that will decrease in 26 is your National Opioid Settlement Fund. The budget for this fund is projected to be $139,721. This is a $28,567 decrease. For fiscal year 26, the budget includes 90% of a community engagement officer for community public safety fire, as well as city council approved contract for community public police with the Saginaw County Community Mental Health to provide services. So even though you're seeing a reduction in that fund because we're just receiving less, you're still providing those services for both police and fire. These reductions are offset and some increases in your special revenue funds. I already mentioned the State of Michigan Saginaw Medical Facility Fund, that increases. So that budget is $21.27 million. And again, they're going to be breaking ground on the medical facility project. We're projecting that anyway. Major and local street funds will increase. The major street fund will realize a net increase of $1.39 million overall to make the 26 budget be $9.99 million. This increase is largely realized in the increase of projects planned citywide as presented by City Engineer Travis Hare back in March. The local street fund will increase, will be $3.76 million for fiscal year 26. And this increase is largely due to the city receiving Saginaw County road millage funds in the amount of $1.21 million. So we're receiving the road millage of monies in fiscal year 26. The block grant home program will be $2.07 million for fiscal year 26, and this represents a $487,605 increase. This increase is due to receiving and utilizing the Home ARP grant. So when we got our ARP funds, we also got Home ARP funds. And so they've already allocated for those projects, we're just using more of it. And then Public Safety Millage Fund for 2026 will be $3.6 million. And this is a $429,000 increase from the previous year. And this increase is due to increase in real property tax revenues for it. Also, it should be noted that in 2026, the personnel complement remains the same at 20 police officers and 10 firefighters. So the next fund type is your enterprise funds. This type of fund accounts for services provided to the public on a user charge basis. Enterprise fund, again, represents approximately 42% of the citywide budget. The enterprise funds for fiscal year 26 is projected to be $85.36 million, and this represents a decrease of $14.49 million, or roughly 15% from the previous fiscal year. On the revenue side for the year beginning July 1, we will continue to have a rate increase for both water and sewer that you approved a couple years ago, so that is built into the budget. Looking at the fund specifically, the boat launch fund is $25,000. It has remained $25,000, and it will continue to remain $25,000. The sewer operation and maintenance fund will decrease $4.11 million for a total of $34.17 million. This decrease is due to a reduction in planned capital purchases and capital improvements, as well as debt service payments. In addition, to offset the reduction in this fund, there will be increases to specific line items, such as chemicals, engineering services, motor pool charges, general liability insurance, premium costs, information management charges, and indirect costs. Further, during fiscal year 25, the city was preliminarily awarded a multi-year clean water state revolving fund grant. So when I said that we got more grants, we did. And this grant is $18.82 million. So that's listed in the budget. As mentioned in the sewer and water presentation, these funds will be utilized for system improvements and various capital outlay projects. The department also adds 2 utility person 3 positions and will eliminate 1 utility 1 position. And these positions are shared with the water fund. Now, looking at the water operation and maintenance fund, it will decrease to roughly $10.38 million for a total of $51.17 million. This decrease is due to reduction in planned capital purchases and capital improvement projects, as well as debt service payment. And similar to the sewer side, you're seeing certain line items increasing, like chemicals and engineering, motor pool charges, general liability insurance. Further, during fiscal year 25, the city was preliminarily awarded a multi-year drinking water state revolving grant in the amount of $18.8 million. For more information, for more details for you, we do have a presentation that was presented by Mike Grenier, the Director of Water and Wastewater Services, and Phil Carwatt, the Director of Public Services, to give you more explanation of what's going on with the water and sewer fund. Our next fund type is internal service funds, and these account for goods and services provided to one department by another on a cost reimbursement basis. This fund type represents approximately 5.27%, or about 5% of the total citywide budget. All the funds in this fund type increased in fiscal year 26, just like that, they all went up. So we're going to look at each of the different, and there's not that many funds, but we're going to look at each one of them. The Public Works building increases roughly $28,899 from $612,716 in 25 to $641,615 for 26. This increase is due to personnel costs, like salaries and benefits, and general liability insurance premium. The Technical Services GIS Fund will increase $17,316,000. This is a net increase, and this fund is primarily attributed to increase in salary and benefit costs across the board. However, there will be a reduction in training development of staff because they're not going to be attending a conference in 26. The Technical Services IS Fund will increase $65,792. Take it from $2.15 million to $2.22 million. This increase is attributed to the purchase of computer software, as well as the lease on the central network switch for City Hall. The radio operation fund will increase $51,866 to make it $177,665. This increase is largely due to recognizing depreciation costs for the purchase of the new radio system back in fiscal year '24. I've already said this before, but the motor pool operation fund will be $3.19 million for '26, and this is a $278,843 increase from the prior year. And again, this increase is related to the cost of motor vehicle supplies and repair costs. This fund will also be purchasing a shop truck through the municipal buyback replacement program. And additionally, during 2026, a fleet foreman has been added to the complement, and this was possible due to the elimination of a vacant fleet maintenance person 3 position. So 1 for 1. The self-insurance fund for '26 is projected to be $2.66 million, and this is an increase of $381,000, which is due to increase in insurance rates in the nation. And finally, the workers' compensation fund will be $1.41 million for fiscal year '26, and this is an increase of $32,198. This increase is due to higher appropriation of funds for settlements and judgments. The last fund type is your fiduciary funds. And the fiduciary funds accounts for the administration of property or assets that are owned by other entities besides the city. And this fund type is 0.02% of the total citywide budget. And so for fiscal year '26, it's projected to be $34,910. This is the same as it has been in the previous fiscal year. The cemetery endowment funds accounts for this type, these funds are legally restricted resources that are 25% of the cemetery revenues collected in the general fund. These revenues can only be used for cemetery care purposes in accordance with the city charter.